The lovely and talented Chip Roy is with us now. Hello, Chip.
Good morning, Glenn. How are you, brother?
I'm really good. I wish people were taking the crisis that we are facing on the border more seriously. I think it's getting better, but I don't think people understand what we are actually facing. And the state of Texas came out and called a spade a spade. The Venezuelan gang has now been, by Texas, called what it is, a terrorist organization.
Well, look, I do think the election season, J.D. Vance last night, broadly speaking, where we've been trying to drive the message over the last few years, is taking root. It's taken time. We obviously have a media that doesn't want to help. They covered up. They basically make excuses for an administration that is purposely abusing our borders to achieve their political aims. And in the process, they are endangering Americans. Americans are dying, and migrants are getting abused. J.D. handled that very well, pushing back on that last night. I know we'll talk about the debate in a minute, but on the issue, it's really important because this comes up a lot. And I know you get this a lot as a man of faith. We get pushed back on it, saying it is unchristian-like, right? That we are not being compassionate. And you hear the Pope out there talking about this. If we want to have our borders be secure and stop the flow of illegal immigration. I think that is exactly backwards.
I do too.
The Bible is very specific about sovereignty, about God's plan, about the nations. You don't have to look any further than the history of Israel itself and how they dealt with boundaries. And there's plenty of scripture recognizing sovereignty in God's plans. But importantly, it is inherently unchristian and uncompassionate to allow these children to be abused, to allow people to be abused, to be put in harm's way, to be used by the cartels, to be then put in slave labor, to be put in the sex trafficking trade, to have 320,000 kids get misplaced by our bureaucratic government who's being supposedly compassionate. It's ridiculous. We need to stand up for a sovereign nation because we have a right to do so. Elon Musk says this very well. Are you truly going to invite 7.7 billion people on this planet to come join the 300 million plus Americans and say that we don't have borders? Well, then we don't have a nation. It just defies common sense. So the rule of law matters, and this is the last point I'll say. The rule of law matters for the very people that are attracted to come here. Because if we don't have the rule of law, if we don't have a nation, then they have no place to go. The huddled masses have no place to long for and strive for. And then we weaken the rest of the world. We weaken the Western Hemisphere. We empower our enemies. And you have 35,000 Chinese nationals coming here. You have all of these terrorist organizations. You point out the Venezuelan gangs. They're real. I went out to Aurora, Colorado. I went and met with the residents of those apartments who lost their ability to have a home, who didn't have a manager on site. Venezuelan gangs were changing the locks. This is all real. It's true. And thankfully, people are waking up. Some of us have been screaming this for 5 years, some in Congress. Finally, I think the American people are finally waking up.
So tonight on the TV show, I'm exposing some of the things that are happening overseas, where they're training for activities here in the United States. In places like Iran, we are in serious trouble. Our Department of Homeland Security has said, that it's only a matter of time now, and all of the lights are flashing red. I'm surprised we haven't been hit yet, but I would expect one after the election or shortly before the election. What is it going to take for people to understand this is not going to get better unless you make a massive change in leadership?
Well, I hope people are starting to see that. What we see right now is the destruction of America. Nothing less than that. And I think it's really important. And I think I'm in a unique position to make that point. You no doubt have listeners who have long fully supported President Trump, maybe a few that were, no, I support DeSantis, but now they're back to Trump. I was out there advocating for Ron DeSantis. He's a good friend and a good man, and I very much respect him. I can't overstate how critical it is and important it is that Donald Trump get elected on November 5th. I cannot overstate that. If we don't get him elected, I don't believe the Republic can survive. I don't think it is any I don't think that's hyperbole, Glenn. Like, we live in a world where people do this stuff for clicks. They do this stuff and they say outrageous things. I don't like making statements like that. I believe in our country. Our country turns 250 years old in 2026 on July 2nd when we voted to break away from England. I believe in the values of this country and the greatness of so many Americans. But this administration, the current radical progressive Democrat regime, have completely disintegrated our safety, security, and culture. They've invited masses of people into our country, released known criminals, known murderers. Think about that. You saw that data that was released last week with the 13,000, 15,000 known murderers and whatever. We've known this. We finally get a report from the administration confirming it. We've known it because you can see it with your own eyes. Laken Riley's family knows it. Jocelyn Nungary's beautiful mom, Alexis Nungary, knows it. Kayla Hamilton's family knows it. Rachel Marin's family knows it. Do I need to keep going down the list? That's what they're doing to us. So to take it back, you asked the question, what will it take? I think we're seeing what it will take, I hope, in real time. But we're going to have to show up on November 5th, and as President Trump says, make it too big to rig.
So let me ask you that question. FEMA doesn't seem to be pulling out all of the stops to help the people in Appalachia. That is Trump country. I don't know who is working on making sure that the people who don't have roads, cars, electricity are in 5 weeks going to be able to pull a lever for whoever they want to vote for. Are we doing anything about that?
Well, without getting into specifics, with some good friends of mine in North Carolina, I've been having conversations with about that very point, ensuring that we're able to get all of the people who want to have a say in their elections and should have a say in their elections, despite the absolute tragedy that has occurred in the western part of North Carolina and the eastern part of Tennessee. Don't want to forget that as well.
No, I know. It's Appalachia.
And I know you don't. I just meant, broadly, we all keep talking about North Carolina and, parts of Georgia, parts of Tennessee. They all got hit hard. But to your point, yes, some conversations are going on to make sure we try to focus on that. I've had some good conversations with the national GOP. I think there's a limit to what you can do to some degree, right? It's local registrars, and they have to figure out how to get it done. Obviously, right now, we're trying to get, Elon, God bless him, is donating Starlink. We're trying to get that stuff out. FEMA's nowhere to be found. The FCC and all of the federal government that walked away from allowing Starlink to be given out to increase broadband. Instead, they're sitting around, and now these people don't have anything. So Elon, others, private sector people are stepping up. And I will say that's one thing. Go back to the Cajun Navy from a few years back, right?
Yep.
That, came over to help during the floods and the hurricanes. My friend Corey Mills down in Florida, he's working with some private sectors and some guys that are, ex-military. They're flying helicopters, and they're just sticking their middle finger up to the bureaucracy, to the federal government and local government, by the way, that wants to get in the way of it all. That's the way we save our country. It's not getting in this weird, internecine battles in D.C. I do my best up here to try to, basically, the way some of my friends put it is, we're kind of prophets to a degree. We have to kind of go look at what's going on, send up the warning signals. I wrote a letter in April about the George Soros radio issue because I saw it coming. That's our job, right? As you look out, you go put that stuff out there, and you try to highlight for the people so we can raise the issue. Because like it or not, I'm 1/435th of 1/2 of 1/3 of this crap hole, and we have to build numbers. And the American people in our system are the ones that help us build the numbers. So that's what we try to do. I got off target. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Are we going to actually look into the funding of those George Soros funders?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking into it. Like I said, I rose the issue up, got some committee folks looking at it, trying to figure out. There's some lawsuits. Some of our friends at America First Legal. There's going to be, I think, some radio stations and some others that would have standing. We're trying to figure out who would have standing. I don't have standing, I don't think. We're trying to figure that out, how we can at least litigate it to try to stop it, because what they're doing is unprecedented. It's unlawful, we believe.
Do I have standing? Because I'm on some of those stations. Do I have standing?
You may be, and you might need to have that. I'm happy. Let's have that conversation.
Okay.
You might have standing, because we need to elevate that issue. It's a huge, huge issue. You know better than I do. And so, look, I was talking to Brendan Carr in the FCC. He's been one of the leaders on this. I'm sure you've followed him out there on social media.
Yeah.
And Brendan, he's been putting this out there. I said, dude, what do we do? He goes, God, we got to win in November because we're outvoted. They lost 3-2. It was a bad decision, but that's what happens. It's like the people that run FERC. It's like the people that run everything else. If we don't win in November, back to the point, 5 minutes ago, we lose the country.
Yeah.
That's what's at stake. It's things like this, the FCC.
Yeah.
FERC,
Tulsi Gabbard said to me last night, I was talking to her after the debate, and she said, Glenn, this is all about freedom of speech. The last thing that J.D. Vance said in the debate was, this is about freedom of speech. And it is. We are going to lose freedom of speech if they are reelected to another term.
And we are going to lose our very way of life as a result. And we're going to be attacked on our Second Amendment. We're going to be attacked on all of the things upon which our nation was founded. These rights come from our Creator. They are our rights. The government that was created by the founders recognized those rights. They didn't give us those rights. We have to flex our muscle as people who, as the Declaration lists out, as Jefferson and to some degree some help from Adams and Franklin, as those guys wrote that out, it was very clear what they meant, okay? And we are supposed to live freely. And we need this government to reflect that because we love our country. We look at the flag with pride. We look at the history and all that it stood for. I believe we can take it back. But let's remember, we have a right to live free. That's the bottom line. That's what it actually boils down to at the end. And so this election is going to decide whether or not these 50 states can stand united and be a strong and sovereign nation. This election is going to decide that. I don't like engaging in hyperbole, but when the founders talk about the right to pursue happiness, we've got to pursue happiness. I want it to be with this country. We better win in November to make that happen.
Okay. Chip, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Chip Roy from the